29.
That's 1:30.
Really?
Yeah. Me too. Only we got 4:50 or 4:50.
Good. You still want to park on?
Yeah, but like, some professionals.
Okay, now is it picture?
No, I know, we have to take a group picture.
That's right.
Well,
Let's start.
we got. So
Pardon? What's the matter?
I'm just checking.
Just checking for audio.
Oh, okay. Let me find you
Okay.
again. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We'll start.
Okay.
This, March 28th meeting of the HCDPA. We can, Logan, can we have a roll call, please?
Yeah.
I mean, roll call, please.
Chair Moranti,
Here.
Vice Chair Smith,
Here.
Treasurer Morris,
Outside talking.
Secretary Joyner,
Teresa, here.
and Mayor Johnson.
Present.
Next, chance everyone to read the minutes and
Yes.
Yes. I wanted to say that we had some issues with the Zoom recording. And I wasn't sure if we took action in a public meeting. We missed sorry, let me just try to, did we appoint an executive director at the last meeting?
Yes.
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 I don't think that's documented in the minutes because I think we lost the recording of half of the meeting, and so Logan and I are asking.
okay. Do you want to go back and edit that?
So we have to do it again.
Yeah, we could either edit the minutes or we could do it again.
Chris, what do you think we should do?
I think you should have the minutes edited today. That's the purpose of looking at it, to reflect what the board confirms was actually announced and approved at that meeting, right?
I'm not sure when it was done in the meeting. It must have been during the annual resolution section.
You're asking about the meeting of, what was the date, Sarah?
This was in
February.
February?
Maybe. Sorry, I'm just. Yes, because we entered into a client session, it came out and talked about the minutes, there was an annual resolution. This might have also been, it's possible that we just recording. I'm curious, can we approve these minutes at the next meeting and just now we told you all that, and then we can take some time to go back and look at the recording and try to confirm who voted to nominate Dominic?
It was late, you said it was later, in the meeting?
I don't think it was at the top of the meeting.
No.
I think it was, yeah.
It was after the executive, first executive session.
Right, and so then it would have been maybe right before the annual resolution. I just don't know when we took action on that. And Logan drafted the minutes for the first time, did a great job, thank you. But we had some technical difficulties with the Zoom, and I wasn't able to like go back and double check, and it wasn't in my notes left over that I took on the meeting, so that's what we're discussing.
Okay, so I think, Chris, if we just hold off and we're going to revisit the meetings for corrections and adjustments for next meeting, does that work?
I mean, I guess so. I think the board's affirming that that appointment was in fact made.
So
Yeah.
can we,
The
can we
appointment
approve
was
the
made.
minutes based on the edit, basically? Like,
So the motion was made by Margaret, seconded by the mayor, and it was all in favor, according to my
Okay.
notes.
When was that taken?
It was after, let's see. Motion, so it was after the Greene County thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was after that and after the executive session. Let's see, motion to appoint Logan, that was first. And then we went into the floodplain motion after Logan. That's where I have
So
it
we did-
anyway.
So it was before Logan. You said Kamal motioned and Margaret seconded?
no.
No, Margaret moved and the mayor seconded, right?
And all in favor?
Okay.
So that's great.
Yeah, and then you
So-
discussed the going to the bank and all of that, so it was before that, okay?
It was before the bank, okay.
Okay.
Well, before
Did you
the
put that-
discussion about the process of going and just setting up the accounts and setting up the escrows and so forth. I think it had to do with those escrows, right? And then we went to the HDF. So you appointed the bank earlier because that was part of your reorg resolution, right? I think
Right.
that was early on. Right. So I don't mean that reference to the bank. I think there was another discussion about the bank having to do with setting up the escrow for that particular flood matter, right?
Okay,
So that was that.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I think the precise order, it sounds like we talked about it in the flood permit review, and that makes sense because it was after we went into executive session to discuss this hiring, that second breakout, that's when the Zoom dropped off, and so we didn't have that material. Okay,
So can we edit that for the minutes?
yeah.
Let me know when you got it.
Okay.
So I'm gonna say,
So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes based on the edits to adding the executive, going to approval.
Second. So that was Mayor motion, Mara second. No,
that was protected.
Okay, so with the, that's all in favor? Can we get a motion to accept the minutes? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion passed. That work, Chris?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we're on the admin report.
Yeah, and we'll get that, make a note that we'll make those minutes and we upload the correct ones to this. Okay, hello, everyone. Just a couple of things to note up here. So Logan and I have been doing a lot of training, both together and with Margaret as incoming treasurer, across a wide range of topics. Margaret and I had a deep dive on outstanding Galvin loans, for example. Logan did some training with the authority's budget office, and has been doing some training. So our invoices are a bit larger because of all that time spent trying to onboard and transfer, do a knowledge transfer. There's been a lot of activity in the last month with the flood permit and with the audit, including a lot of effort it took to to readdress the ongoing Galvin loan issue, which we didn't get to at the end of last year. And so for that reason, issues in my capacity, issues with catching up with Galvin loans, our audit is not going to be completed for the March 31st ABS deadline.
I just want to speak to the invoices for the coordinators.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so, I have been working very closely on also new to this with Sarah and Logan. And, I think it's really important that, sorry, this, I think it's really, stop it already. I think it's really important that we have good transitions into the next. And my understanding is that Sarah, when you came on board, there was no transitional training. Sorry?
2 hours.
And so I think it's, yes, we're going to have overlap here for a while, but I think that it's really important to have that so that we have really solid training. Sarah has been very quickly in, you know, explaining everything to me from a training perspective. And I think it is important ongoing for this organization for the level of transition and training. So I just want people to understand that, yes, you're going to see higher invoices than, you know, routine once it's, you know, everything's kicking over and we're doing maybe 5 to 10 hours a week, that's fine. But for a little while until that happens, that's what you're going to see. And I think it's money very well spent.
So the finance committee, there's a finance, you're the finance person, and then there's a finance, your treasurer, then there's a finance committee, right?
Right.
Yeah, so shouldn't they be able to?
I'm sorry, you need to speak up.
I'll just also, but we're in the section of the agenda of admin report. We can talk about
Hey, I didn't know.
the finance part in the next section. But thank you, Margaret. And what I also want to add is that it's been a lot of labor to start that work. And that's part of the reason that the labor to complete the audit has been slow, and our audit is going to be late. The ABO deadline is March 31st, and we're not going to make it. And that's both issues on my end / just this general transition, but we just only got word back from Galvin's audit, account confirmation in the last day or two. So it took a while to get those letters out, and because it's a really complicated issue. Anyway, I think lateness is not our biggest problem, but that's something that is true.
So also on the administrative side, the other thing I want to point out, now that we are moving back into City Hall, I've been working with Tracy and with Michael to identify a space where we can have in City Hall a filing cabinet where Logan will be able to maintain all of his records, and where he and I or anyone else on the board that he needs to meet with, we can meet at City Hall, in chambers, whatever. So we're working on that. Sarah was dealing with the situation, particularly during COVID and when we were relocated here, et cetera, where that wasn't really feasible. So now we're working on administratively solving that.
Just so things don't get lost, when we do come up to that section of finance, I want to reinstitute my question.
Yeah.
As to the finance committee.
Yes, the
Being
role of
also part of the training that's being given.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Oh,
So I
yeah.
just want to make sure, you know.
Yeah, no, that's
since
a
it
great
was
point.
open, you know, I want to make sure that.
I apologize. I thought your question was about,
You didn't let me finish, that's fine.
well, it was about the size of our invoice, not the content of the training, but that's a good point. And that's later in the agenda, we got.
Right.
Thank you.
And I think you explained it early on that initially it was going to be heavy-handed in just because of the transition. So I don't think anyone expected anything, but you know, moving to transition with you too.
Right. Thank you. Okay, so I just wanted to prepare us for that some of the things that are due on March 31st are going to need to be submitted late in this admin report. And that we'll also need to reschedule the April meeting, both to accommodate the auditors presenting to us, and to accommodate Logan, who's going to be out of town. I'm not going to say why. Logan's getting married during the the time that our HCDPA meeting would be.
Congratulations.
I'm sure you can change that.
We can have the meeting at his wedding.
Yeah. Really have a meeting.
Yes, food, right?
Meeting in the American do what?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we'll get to that later on. And I think with that, we can go into the financial report.
So, Margaret, are you ready to do financial, or do you think Sarah?
No, I think Sarah's gonna do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we did the reconciliation and so on.
Yeah, and I'm also, I've never really nailed down a best practice of what this session is for. Should I read all the invoices out loud or
I'm going into.
state the opening and closing balance of all of our accounts? Okay, great. I think it's just about bill payment. Chris is shaking her head. So we presented 3 invoices today. There's an invoice for Christmas services, RCMP, that caught up, I think, on services performed in February, and then was also a heavy workload dealing with the flood permit stuff, a few other contracts. So there were a couple of different invoices that we presented from RCMP, and then I had an invoice for $1,230 and Logan for about $960, and those were all sent out to the board and also uploaded to the website.
So, we discussed this, I think, yesterday, and I know that a second request went out to Galvin on the loans. Have we gotten a response?
Yes, yeah, we heard back.
Sorry?
Yes, we did.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I was gonna get to that later, but yeah, let me go ahead and get to that later.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sure. And then, so that's from the HCDPA General Fund. The Housing Trust Fund, we also have, we received and was shared out an invoice for the Q4 of the Housing Justice Director's salary reimbursement to the city. And then we agreed at the last meeting that we would adjust the payment schedule for the contract with Greater Heights and Promise Neighborhoods. And so we could, Logan and I wrote 2 checks, so we could write and approve that expense today. That would be $25,000. Those are the bills. Any questions?
Is that for the, that's good for the finance?
I think so.
So we're at resolutions and,
Well, no, I need a motion to pay the bills.
oh, I'm sorry. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passed.
Great, thank you so much. We don't have any other open resolutions and motions right now, so we can go into old business.
Yep. Okay.
And first up is the flood permit review.
Mhm.
So just a summary of what happened between last meeting and this meeting. We formalized now twice that Dominic is the acting executive director of HCDPA, strictly for the purpose of administering the floodplain review. Paul Russo provided the escrow check, provided funds to be held in escrow for us to sort of streamline the process of engaging an engineer. We created an escrow account and we signed and countersigned an agreement with Paul Russo about that escrow account, so about those funds. So the funds were deposited. The mayor signed a task authorization agreement with the engineering firm that has master services agreement with the city partner Lodgis. I don't know if you're saying that right. So that's done. And then they just responded today, I think, and said that that's all buttoned up and the review of the permit should be done by the end of next week. Once that's done, I don't know what the next step is. We have some paperwork that we can process. I think that you can process as the executive director, but I'm not actually sure about wrapping that process.
Chris, do you have any input on, or thoughts on the next step?
I don't see on me.
Right.
Chris, you're muted.
Yes, yeah, I see that. The next step is going to be just the permit would actually be approved or disapproved, whatever, as an application by the executive director. So it wouldn't require board action. So the board's action was to get an executive director in place, and then the city ordinance provides the process and procedure that would need to be followed. So that's what will happen.
Okay, so we can just take action on that when the permit is done.
So again, you, the board, will not be taking an action.
Yeah, that's what I mean, that was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. Okay.
I'm gonna get a pen.
And then can report back, of course, to the board, right?
Dominic does that, then that becomes part of the application to the planning board for approval.
Well, I think it's actually separate.
Sorry?
I thought the planning board already tagged that up.
No, this piece is missing from the
Ah, okay.
application, that's why they have stuck with.
But then it's out of our hands.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, any other questions on that?
What was that question? What was it?
It's hard to hear.
I didn't.
No, I didn't have,
Okay.
sorry, I have a hearing aids in, so I talk softer, I sound loud to
Go
myself.
ahead, talk loud.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna shout. So I didn't really have a question. The issue is that Dominic is the executive person. He will get the report from the engineer. He will approve the report. And then that needs to go to the planning board because the spirit of the application to the planning board. We have to do the permit piece. And then it's out of our hands. We pick it up.
They presented as part of your resolution.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's good.
Yeah, I think that's good.
So now we're at the ABA.
No, it hasn't just been updates.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Next. The Housing Trust Fund.
Before we go to that, I thought Teresa had a question as well.
Oh, we're still- okay.
Finance. section.
Right.
Oh, I think where I got that in this section about the
Policy.
annual policy review. But if you want to go on, sorry. Your
It's just
question is
that-
about,
Okay, the training that's being given regarding finance for this agency, and I don't want to keep the HCDPA.
DPA.
We do have a finance committee, and I believe if the other two members are not interested, I am to be part of that training, to understand the finances and the, what's, of this committee. So
Was that
whatever
the,
training you're doing, whatever, transition.
I'll say, I don't have the capacity to like lead a board training.
It's not,
I've had the
you tell
capacity.
me, I'll make it.
I've had the capacity to work with Logan to take over my job, and then I've had to train Margaret pretty deeply on these loans in a really like ad hoc way. We had to do it the day, like I said, strap in, Margaret, we're gonna have to talk for about 2 hours about these loans because we needed to get some paperwork signed as quickly as possible.
I understand, but that doesn't neglect that.
No, I agree. I'm saying there's not been some coordinated program, and we can talk more directly about how to activate and empower the committees of this board, but there's not like a training that I can just lead it.
All right, so we can continue the conversation about how.
Right.
So what has happened so far is, I have participated in a couple of reconciliations of bank statements.
And we used to do that together, Teresa.
Sorry,
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. Teresa.
anything that I have to sign, I require very detailed information on exactly what it is I'm signing, and I've talked to Chris about that. We had a meeting with Chris, Sarah and Logan. It wasn't so much training as Sarah has indicated, digging into exactly what the status of these various loans were, because we had to send a statement out to Galvana around one of the loans and restating the outstanding interest, outstanding principal and so forth. So I wouldn't so much call it training as working together to get these documents out. But I think your point is a good one, and that we probably should have a session for the finance group, sit down and understand everything about how.
Because you are entering into areas that, because I was a secretary, then it was Wallace, so, something that should be open to.
I agree with you.
So our committees, the finance committee is Margaret, Teresa, and Ravonda. the governance committee is Mal, Margaret, and Dominic, and the audit committee is Mal, Wanda, and Teresa. I remember, but in my time in this board, there's not been a real meaningful usage of the committee structure, but I do know we're required by public authorities law to officially have those committees. Last year, when we approved the audit, for example, our meeting included like a breakout meeting of the audit committee to formally, make a recommendation to accept the audit. And I think our finance committee may also have had to have a breakout to accept the investment plan last year, but I could think of that, that being an example of like the utilization of these committees. These committees have to meet in an open public meetings, so the meetings have to follow the meetings law. Another sort of reason we don't coordinate them very much because it's enough, one meeting a month is enough. But the governance committee in particular is something that I think we need to activate very soon, and I'll get to that in my video section. Can we now throw it to Michelle?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. So last month I had a lot, we also today is pretty light. The first one, I just want to check in on the status of the EIN, so we can process the
We,
donation.
I signed off on that.
Yeah, the W-9.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, okay, cool. Okay, thanks. So then we
Do we have a report from you here?
report.
Do we have a document?
Yeah, there was one submitted.
Yeah, I sent the Hudson
Hang
News.
on. Let me go to the document. Is this the Hudson Ridge report?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Michelle,
Oh,
I
okay,
think
that
it
just
was like
has,
3
and
attachments.
so the EIN piece from W9 we addressed. Do I have, is there something here that lists?
Oh, Michelle's talking question.
She's not even, she hasn't even given her report yet
Yeah, I
No,
know,
but-
to look, to know what you're looking for.
No, but I thought we were going to
I
have.
just sent it yesterday.
Yeah,
Sorry?
I sent it yesterday.
yes, 3
Where
attachments that
is
she
it?
sent. Is she gonna be able to do her report? I don't think so.
Can you tell me where that is, sir?
It's in your email.
Oh, well, it should be on the website.
Okay, so this is my mistake. Michelle did include all of these materials and we only uploaded one to the website. But it was sent to the board at 2:39 PM. There's 3 items on it, following up with February meeting, and there's a REITs update attached.
And it's
the
talking.
next meeting.
Do you think you could share on the screen the talking point?
No, I could, yeah. I could.
My talking points are very brief. Just asking about the W9, letting you know that the update report, which was sent. 16 households helped in this year so far. January through March are the busiest months compared to the last few years. It's just the time of year when people tend to need help more. So 38 people helped, 16 households. And then the only other thing I had was that the Housing Trust Fund Committee did not meet this month. There really wasn't any business to discuss, although I met with some of the members in small groups who continue working on preparing stuff for the April meeting, and our next meeting is April 13th at 5:30 PM. And then we had sent this city donation request to the Common Council this past month, so those funds from the city's donation should be coming through.
They actually came through a couple days ago.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So, but you said there's 38 individuals help and 16 households. So does that mean there are multi-people living in those households?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a way to, because I imagine there's different assistance, right? It could be back rent, it could be helping to find another apartment. I mean, is there a way to,
It lists what they.
is that what I saw?
Yeah.
Okay, I did see that. Okay,
Where.
gotcha.
Security deposit.
And that's what that was?
Yeah.
That's what that was for that?
Yeah, that's the spreadsheet.
Great,
And
thank you.
sometimes things, you have to put Michelle's name in the,
To look for it.
yeah, to look for it.
Yeah.
For some reason, I didn't get it until I put her name in it, then I saw.
So I was looking at this and I was looking at the comments. And so for a number of them, background assistance, there's no comment. Some of them are, there's a rent increase or somebody lost a job, or there's some specific issue, prices like the car issue and so forth. In the cases where there's no comment, what are those about?
I'm not sure. It's,
So the first one is background assistance, $2,500, and there's no circumstance or comment.
I mean, that, I also want to be careful about, this is like pretty high level. I'm uncomfortable sharing like specific detail about people's stuff in public.
No, I understand that, but was this a medical emergency, personal emergency?
That one, the house that got behind on rent. And
Because,
Because they're for profit.
Living in poverty.
I understand that, but like we have things here where somebody lost a job, they have medical bills, etc. But
Yeah,
I think there should be a comment.
But,
I mean-
well, no, sometimes that's helpful, just because in mine, it helps, because it's that situation, it could be because they had to fix their car, right? So it helps in that situation, say, they got behind because of A, B, and C. It doesn't have to get real personal,
No, it doesn't
but
have to be
what it, because that's very valid. Or they needed to pay something else. So those are very, because you want to find the common ground and try to figure out how to fix these problems. that
Sorry, hang
happen.
on, Donna. What you saying?
I was saying it can get very personal because if it's a specific situation, people can probably determine who the person is. It's not the point of the program, is to expose people's personal business.
I mean, I can make sure that there's something in each category, for moving forward. I can tell you that some of these I know they're kind of personal and it's hard to put into 3 words. But moving forward, get more broader purposes.
Just broader categories.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, like you had reported last month, that in general, like maybe it's at the county council, no, actually I think it's at the county council, that you have very few instances where the same person comes back for assessment.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons to come up with categories of issues is to also address an underlying problem so that this will not occur.
Yeah, and I can tell you, Promise Neighborhood looks at things very holistically.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why people haven't come back, right? They're able to. really
Exactly.
trust in, yeah.
Exactly.
Would you guys accept the category of last resort? Meaning that they've been to all the other agencies and they're the only ones that got help from us? Would that be a category?
I'm not sure, well,
Like just like the comment of just last resort, I mean,
Well, I can talk to Promise, we can give it some.
because sometimes promise will help when nobody else does, because a lot of them have ran out of money. Most
Right.
all of them, all of them.
Right.
And we're replenishing promise, so they sometimes have money when no one else has it.
I just want to be careful with too much information. Because we also don't want to attract people that are asking for help.
Yeah. But I mean, I think you could have a series of categories that are impersonal, a drop-down menu, if you will, of this was medical emergency, transportation emergency, employment situation. You could have some broad categories and then you could just use those to explain why in this particular situation, this individual needed help. I'm just saying.
Okay, so now,
That's it.
the next review.
Thank you, Michelle.
Is that it, Michelle?
Yes.
Cool, thank you. Now we're back to the audit.
yes. So we received today, an updated task list for the audit. One of the main things, apparently in your inbox, Dominic, there's a routine fraud interview that you have to complete as chair.
Okay.
I've completed one too, I think, and it's just like, are you aware of any fraud? And you'll answer that question through that. Maybe we can follow up on that to make sure. They were also awaiting the Galvin loan confirmation. No, the Galvin loan confirmations came in, so that was a big holding issue with audit. The biggest piece that's missing is I need to complete drafting a going concern analysis. They included a note. They said, tell us your plans going forward, provide a projection of your cash flow for 1 year from the current date and plans to manage it. Any new sources of revenue you'd expect to come in, or any efforts you'll be making to reduce your expenses. I'll point out that the audit is almost half of our annual expense. So just want to point that out. My draft has noted that, but also we are in a better financial position in terms of revenue than we've been in recent years, mostly because of the option agreement with HHA. And then I think also because of the way that this isn't really revenue because it's money cash that's already in hand. Well, we are receiving contributions to the Housing Trust Fund annually from the city. And we are receiving $10,000 of overhead into the HCDPA general account from the Housing Trust Fund. But I think, yeah, I'm drafting something that explains too that we hired somebody to replace me who has more skills in grant writing, and that we could develop a strategy going forward to pursue more grant administration for the city. But this is a big ongoing issue. This is a bizarre remnant of the urban renewal era. And we have a revitalized purpose after the ADLN grant. People have considered many times should the HCDPA be shut down, and they've said no. And this will continue. The going concern in our audit year over year is that we don't have a way to stay cash flow positive. Our expenses are incredibly bare bones, and the most expensive thing we have is the auditor. So I will circulate a draft of that analysis. I'm not actually sure that it requires like a board action to approve that written report. I'm not seeing any evidence that's needed. But I would look for feedback about how to write it. And that's that main thing. Let me just look at one more number here. Yeah, so the things that are missing, I actually need to follow up with, no, that's fine. Projection of the cash flow, and then they also want an update on the option agreement. And if there's any plans for it to be executed in 2024, I don't think we know that, right? From HHA.
Right.
Yeah. Do you have any idea when that might become something we'll know? It's okay if the answer is no.
At this time, no, but we do have a really good meeting next Wednesday, so who knows, next month I'll probably be able to update you. But at this time, no, unfortunately.
So the going concern analysis, updating them on the option contract. I actually need to update them on I gave them the wrong copy of the HCDPA Promise Neighborhood contract, and then Dom's for audit review, and those are the outstanding items on the audit. Now that the loan paperwork is all come through. Once they are ready to package the audit and the management letter, we'll need to meet again to accept the audit and the management letter before we go forward.
Chris, do we need to have any kind of review of the response in the letter as a board? So you're muted.
Yeah, I muted again.
We can't hear you.
Do you mean the response that Sarah said she was providing for some of the auditor's questions?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it should be circulated so that you know what's being presented. But generally speaking, the management report would be prepared by management, which in this case would be Sarah and Dominic, and for the most part, right? And so I think that the audit committee should schedule a meeting before the next regular meeting so that you have an opportunity to review the audit and discuss it with the auditor. And then the audit presentation would be made to the board, right, Sarah? At the next
That's
meeting?
right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the audit committee is small, Rhonda and Teresa. So once we know when the audit will be completed, then we will need to schedule that meeting. Or like a time frame. I'm gonna give them these materials ideally by early, that go to concern analysis ideally by early next week. So it shouldn't be too long. But it'll take us a second to figure out when we need to schedule that meeting.
I just want to ask one question. ABO.
Authorities Budget Office.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We don't use acronyms at all in this business, right?
That's the state, the part of the state comptroller that oversees different public authorities like HCDPA. Okay, so we'll have, the audit committee will have to follow up, and remember that meeting will need to be a public meeting. I guess another members of the board come as well if they want to observe, but, okay. The ABO, yeah.
Yeah.
The ABO annual report. This is another big chunky piece of content here. So I appreciate everyone's patience. I know it's after 5. Just stepping back for a second, every year we report to the ABO twice. We submit our budget for the forthcoming year at the end of the current year, right? And then in the spring, and that's happens in November. In the spring, we submit several reports. There's a report on any investments, a report on any procurements, and an annual report, which is the biggest and chunkiest one. They are all due together with a fourth thing submission, which is the audited financial statements and management letter before the end of March. In the past, I've mainly based this report off of my predecessor's process because I can see all their past submissions and I've copied over my materials. And I think that we need to get into a more rigorous review of these report materials as a board, because the annual report in particular does specify, it asks us to a lot of yes or no questions, like did we create an audit committee? Did we create a finance committee? Do we have a whistleblower policy? Are our bylaws posted on the website? A lot of these questions are really easy to answer, and some of these questions are not easy to answer. And I provided in the materials a incomplete draft of the ABO report, but it shows you all of the different questions. I think that a way to go about finalizing this annual report would be to have a governance committee meeting with Chris to review the report with me. There's the materials, a lot of pieces of the public authorities law are referenced. Like I said, some of these are very easy things to say yes to. Like the report will say, according to this section of public authorities law, did you set up an audit committee? But the whistleblower policy, I think, is one that we're actually sure that we have a policy. Another part of the ABO annual report would ask, do we adequately review our internal controls? And the answer is yes, because we have an auditor review our internal controls, but then also we may want to oversee our own internal control review. So we need to ensure that we have plans to satisfy the various elements of public authorities law that's noted in these reports. Some things are accomplished through the audit or our annual resolution, but not everything. And then my suggestion is that the governance committee will meet sometime soon to do a more thorough review before we sign up for the annual report. Because the audit would be like we can submit these things all together.
In the past, I'm looking at the graph that you sent us. In the past, maybe these questions were from small responses. Has there been any request for clarification or additional information?
Yes, we talked about this a bit more in depth last year. The year before that was the first time that I'd done it, and it was a bit sort of charging ahead. The last year we did talk about it more deeply, and we talked about it that first year too. I think it was.
So what I'm asking is, when we submit this, have we ever gotten a request from the entity that was submitting it for additional?
Yes, not very thoroughly, and I can't quite remember what those communications were, and they're in the Paris portal.
So I'm just looking at this as a policy and procedure auditor myself.
Yeah.
It's something I've done for 30 years. I would not really just accept yes and no. So if I get the answer to the question, is the board established a governance committee in accordance with XYZ? Yes, I would also want to see documents
Yes.
supporting that, showing the members of the board and data which it was established.
We can look at.
Or it's like, for each one of these, I would want to see, yes, we did this, and here's the implementation.
Yes.
Yes, we have this, and here's the.
If I may,
Yeah.
the ABA portal asks you, a lot of these questions are interrelated. So they ask, did you have an audit committee? Did you have a finance committee? And then, is there an organizational chart on your website, and where is it posted? And then you include the link to the website. A lot of it is just, it's not as probably as thorough as it may sound to you. You don't have to upload copies to the minute. We just have to, it's checking that we are all of our policies formally adopted and located on the website. That's what they want to see. And
But most-
that's usually.
Sarah, I would say most of the things that they're asking you about are things that are supposed to be on your website anyway. All of your policies are supposed to be on the website. All your minutes are supposed to be on the website. You should be able to true it up by looking at what's been posted, right? And if you're answering no to some of these questions, you should be asking yourself, why do you don't have it, right? Because
Right.
this is for the most part a push pull, right?
Right, exactly. It's pretty, what did you say? It's for the most part.
A push pull.
Yeah,
If you-
it's very, it's checkbox. I would.
So Chris, when we're answering no, so for example, has the board adopted policies for the following in accordance with section X? Salary and compensation, and the answer is no. Should we have some explanation as to why that is no?
Certainly,
There's-
it would be, I think it'd be good to document it. Sarah, is there a place where it asks you for that?
There's not a place where it asks you to supply a comment about salary and competition. No.
No, I just pulled out because it's in.
No, I know. There's not an ability to include a comment when you answer that question.
Okay, got it.
It's up to them to sort of call. And we don't have any salaried employees. We do have compensation, to.
Oh, we also said no to whistleblower protection.
And I'll say this is a draft, this is an unsubmitted draft, but as I was working on this, I don't think that we have a policy about whistleblower protection or time.
So my question is more a general one. When we're saying no, how do we explain that?
Yeah.
She
There
said that they would
is.
reach out if they wanted an explanation. They
There-
would reach out and say
That's
why,
Hmm,
why,
No,
and this is. And
no,
then-
you're not really, I don't think you're really gonna hear about this unless you have an ABO audit. And so
Right.
what you wanna do is follow all these procedures correctly so that if you were subject to an audit, you would be able to show compliance with the base requirements of what your policy should be, right? So,
And when the whistleblower contribute to the salary employee, though, is that what that's for, the whistleblower? Wouldn't
it's
that
at,
be for
well, no,
some-
the whistleblower is about, you probably, if you don't have a whistleblower policy, you should, because a whistleblower policy is gonna be anybody who says, I see some fraud going on and I need to tell somebody about it. Typically, that has to do with employees, because those are the ones who you can fire, if they tell somebody about it, but, it's a good policy to have in place anyway, right? And we can
Sure, yeah.
borrow one from somebody else, from the IDA or whatever, right?
And so I think what I'm suggesting is that the governance committee meet to go through these things and identify the policies that we do have and the policies that we need to draft. We can even, there is, I think, a box at the end of the submission portal where we can say, at X meeting, we decided to, our plan is to complete this schedule of policies, next date. But Chris is right. This is more about documenting our responses than it is. I don't know. Yeah, we've built a record over time submitting to the ABO. So if a problem arises, there's something that they can go back and point to and say, you didn't have these policies or you falsely reported, but it's not really that.
Yeah, but just because they're not sending you comments doesn't mean that you're in compliance. It just means that what you're doing is a matter of public record, and occasionally they will do spot audits, just like the IRS, and they, just because you're, right, just because you're submitting information and they're not getting back to you doesn't mean that if you're ever audited, they aren't gonna, give you a lot of bad comments because you didn't do what your statutory requirements are. So it is appropriate, as Sarah suggests, to have the committee go through those requirements and see where you are in compliance, right? It's a good suggestion.
So Sarah, so we already know that our meeting in April has to be rescheduled. So should we try to figure out scheduling a committee, just our committee meetings?
Yeah, I think we should
I
schedule.
mean, normally we can do this like we do the IDA moving forward, but with this situation, we might like have all the committee meetings on one day.
Right.
It before our next big meeting.
And let me check. So that would be the audit committee would be, well, Ron and Teresa, and the governance committee would be Margaret and Dominic. So that's everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So we could just have a special meeting. We may need to, I'm unsure if I move forward with scheduling.
Right, okay.
Because it also depends on when the audit will be finished.
Mm-hmm.
I think the governance committee meeting as a standalone meeting is going to be a longer session.
Yeah, right.
And I think it's possible so we'll have like two meetings. My proposal is 2 meetings.
Yeah.
Special meeting for the governance committee.
Yeah.
And then basically our April meeting will be about the audit. And we can do it like we did last year, where there's a breakout session with the audit committee. But really, the whole board is going to want to be there to hear from the auditor. And so we can have that conversation there.
And what happens at these breakout committees, the audit and governance has to be agreed on the full board anyway, at a full board meeting.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so that's the proposal. Follow a special meeting with the governance committee meeting.
Well, it doesn't have to be a special meeting, it can just be a meeting, right? We just gotta make sure it's posted, appropriate, everything, right? So,
Yeah.
not really a special meeting.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'll try to work on that.
We'll follow, yeah, whatever we're about. So,
The next one's the good news?
yeah. Galvin wrote back to us so there's a process where, because of our audit, our auditors send an account confirmation letter to people that have loans payable to us, right? This is a pretty standard procedure in audits. Last year, we used this mechanism to assert that the loan that had been incorrectly satisfied in 2019 with $19,000 left unpaid, that's an estimate, was still payable. We did all this research, we showed it to them, and then we presented it to their accounts manager and said, this is what our accounts balance shows. Will you confirm that that's what your account balance shows? And they did write back and sign and confirm that our accounting was correct, that this loan was payable, that interest had accrued since 2018, et cetera. And then we followed up with a demand letter. So they verified the account, sent them a demand letter. We did not really get a response. And neither Ryan and Brian had capacity to be aggressive about pursuing this after the second half of last year. So flash forward a few weeks ago, the auditors need us to take this back up again in order for them to consider it payable on our books. And so we issued the account letters, and they did write back, Eric Galloway wrote back and said that certainly there were two loans in question, a 105 balloon loan that's due in January 2031 to be paid in full at that time. It's interest-free balloon payment of $105,000. The second one was related to the sale of a property on the corner of Fifth and Columbia. And that's the one that was incorrectly satisfied. And they wrote back and they said that they intended to satisfy the outstanding loan amount when it comes due for maturity, which is in 2024 in July. So these loans were reinstated in 2014, a 10-year term at 4% interest. So the loan is payable if, this comes to maturity this year. That's not precisely what we asked for because this loan is payable on a monthly basis.
Right.
We did not get a ton of information from Eric, but from what I'm understanding is that they're saying they'd like to pay it in full in July.
They're in default.
They're in default.
Right, and isn't there consequences because they're in the
I'm not sure.
financial?
In terms of like increasing the payment, I'm not sure.
Well, like certain, I mean, if you, between the interest, between other things, shouldn't there be some kind of consequence because they are in the short time frame?
I'm not sure. But this all happened, I learned about this today.
Okay.
So we're in real time deciding what.
So what they're saying right now is saying, we know we owe you money and we're gonna pay it in full in July when it was the full package.
Yeah, which is a modification that note has never had those terms. And there could just be, we could follow up, but we haven't had a chance yet. So I guess I'm seeking instructions.
Any thoughts, Chris?
You're muted,
Yeah, sorry,
you're muted, Chris.
Trying to keep muted. I guess I would have to say, we'll have to look at the documentation that they sent us, if you can send it to me. If you sent them out something saying this is what you owe us, that's presumably what we're going to be seeking, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think, Chris, so it's accruing interest right now when we work through it.
Right.
And there's updated vehicle statement. If we are going to allow them to pay in full in July, the response should say, if you choose to go this route, paying this. What, I was working on a draft version of a demand letter that said you need to pay this through December 2023, and you are late on your payments from January through March, and need to receive all the payments by the exceeded month. Right? That's what we were going to do. So if we're going to respond to this, we should say, we're willing to consider this, however, you will be due to pay X amount of dollars in principal, and the interest at that point will be Y dollars for interest that will have accrued by June 30th, whenever that is. And this is the total amount if you have time, and it must be paid by such and so date.
Right. I mean, routinely, you would just generate a payoff letter, right? And a payoff letter would take that into account, identify a particular date to which you've computed interest, right?
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen the letter, so I need to look at this.
Right.
I don't understand why they can pay us what they owe us through December 2023.
Have me enough sleep.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm not sure either. And then they need to move some money around.
But they did bounce check.
Yeah, you did it.
And we're talking about July of 2024.
Yeah, we're talking about, months a year. Yeah.
Right, but they did not pay a penny.
I know. But if they're gonna pay us July of 2024, and then you only be interest up until that date, any late fees. We can wait.
No, I know, I don't disagree, but given the record of not having paid us for over a year, we likely they will pay some money.
Well, we can, place some type of restriction, some type of something legal on that. If they're gonna pay us, maybe they.
But we should be able to put them in the right now, they're over a year in default, payment
That's.
You and I were in payment on the phone for over a year, something was happening.
Yeah, but our main concern, I think, the community
It's getting the
is
money.
getting the money.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you.
I don't
But if
think
they're
it would
willing
hurt,
to
I
pay
don't
us
think it would hurt to say to them, is there some reason why you can't pay us up through December 2023?
We could, but, you know, we don't want to wait for their response. If it takes another 2 months for them to respond to that. So, you know, I kind of think if we just can at least with some type of penalty and everything, as long as we get the money in July. And if they don't pay it, then you have to put a restriction on what you are still, I don't know what you can do legally. But you know, I'm sure there's something we can do.
Yeah, I think we can always, we only can go back to when we actually, in writing, notify them. We need.
Which is my idea.
Which is correct.
Well, we notified them of the issue.
What I'm talking about the demand letter.
Yeah, you're right. I think the demand is right.
Right, so then moving forward, and then, you know, sticking to this and making sure this happens. I mean, it's getting close, you know, July, but still, we gotta make sure this, I mean, ultimately, just pay, so we get paid and move on, you know, from this, you know, whatever.
Do we need a vote?
Yeah, are we going to say, the choice is to either to follow up with them and say, pay us through December and resume the payments?
I think we wait for Chris this,
Oh, yeah.
and then if you want to send it to us, do maybe, obviously.
Do we need board action? Do we need a board vote to move
And
forward?
the board has not seen the letter that Gavin sent out. Chris hasn't looked at.
I know, but my question
So right
is,
now, I don't think we need that, only the board can do any action because we don't have enough.
my question is about determining if we can take action on this matter before the next meeting. Which is to say, like, can Dominic and Margaret and Chris and I work together to write a response, or does the whole board need to review?
Ask them if they took our money to Savannah.
I mean, you're not asking the board to write off the loan, right?
No.
So this is routine, it should be routine loan administration, right? That the treasurer should be sending out whatever letters are necessary to collect the loan, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, unless you're suggesting something other than routine collection, right? Or some kind of write-off, and I don't think you're suggesting that, right? You're suggesting trying to collect the loan in full, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think Margaret even has some discretion on how you move forward.
So I will discuss it with Chris. I will look at the letter that they sent back. We will calculate with you. My instinct is to tell them, to ask them why it is they cannot pay what they owe us through December 2023, and to give us a reason for that. And to remind them that they are late on their payments for January, February, and March.
And all of this material came through our inboxes this morning.
And I think if we document what, in that little notation for the audit, right? Like, we want, you know, the letter and the notation, that we're moving forward with this. I mean, that should be good enough, right, Chris, in terms of our response to this issue?
I mean, I can't speak for your auditor. They'll have to tell you what they need, so.
Okay.
So when you look into it, you're gonna bring it back to the finance committee, or you're just gonna make the decision?
But Chris is saying that this is a routine thing and that the treasurer would send a response to it. In which case I would send a response to it with advice from Chris.
I think that's a advantageous way for us to move. I mean, I think that's both right in terms of law, and like it works well for us because we need Margaret to be able to take action before the next meeting.
Right.
But I don't want the fact that we're willing to take the money in July 2021. Okay, you are?
I am not. I will
Okay,
send
that's
them-
what I'm saying.
I
I
will
didn't think,
send them a
wait
letter
a minute, I
saying,
didn't think you
you
were
owe
willing.
us this money as a
I know,
cost.
I didn't.
You are late in January, February, and March. Also, by the way, it's now April and you're late on.
You're right, I heard that. And I didn't think you were willing. That's why I'm saying.
Listen, she going to Green Street after this.
With that not being enough. Okay, I didn't think she's saying pay us up until then remember that you owe us.
Because that's happened documents what they owe us. It documents what we expect from them. And then if they still drag their feet, we have a letter that says, this is, yeah, great, you acknowledge you still have this outstanding loan.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that that doesn't get lost in your response. That we are willing to take your money on July of 2024. Yeah, okay, as a member of this board and the finance, I'm willing to take their money. And they can tell me why they haven't paid. Okay. So I don't have to get lost because I know that's something that you would, you seem.
I do not think that in the response to them that we should say, yeah, we're fine with you.
And I do think we should say, that's what I'm trying to put
I
out.
don't think
You've got someone that's saying, I understand what you're saying, but this is what I would like to happen. Okay, so, just.
Okay, so we know that Margaret's gonna write
I do not agree.
a letter, with some explicit words, and then gonna take care of it. And hopefully we'll have, a response at least by the next meeting.
Did you all see the letter that was out last year from Ryan?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it listed out what they do.
Yes.
And it said, this is how you were late, and this one, this one, and this one. Then you were asking, no, they didn't do
Okay,
anything, and they
so-
didn't pay anything.
And we couldn't do anything to make you respond, but they have
No,
responded
we didn't.
to say that they're willing to pay us. I mean, I don't know.
I think actually what's important here is that in the structure of the organization, Margaret has discretion, and you've given Margaret your strong feedback.
Yeah.
And so Margaret can take that into account or not.
Chris, given that, there is a disagreement on the board with this letter, is Margaret still able to take that action, given that there's no board?
In the finance committee.
Even though she's the treasurer?
So I guess what I'm confused about is all you have is, I just saw an email that says, we're going to pay you in July. Well, I mean, you should have routine loan procedures. You should have loan procedures that say you send out letters every month if somebody is in default. You should be, is in arrears, excuse me. You should be sending out, how much they owe you, tell them that they still owe it to you. And, that just should be part of your routine procedures. And I think that if you have an extraordinary circumstance where, finance says, look, I'd like to recommend that we accept, funds that have been presented to us and waive payment of other interest. I think that's a question for another day. I don't think that's in front of you right now because nobody's tendered payment to you, right? And we haven't really had a request for, we've just had a one-sided, we plan to pay you in July. Whatever that means. So I think you should continue to treat it as a routine loan administration matter, and you probably need to discuss whether that's in governance or finance. Maybe that's a finance discussion. How should you be managing your loan, portfolio, and what should you be doing, and what your process should be, and what staff do you need to do that, right? I think that's the better way to do it.
Do we have that in place yet? Do we have that?
Because you haven't had very many, Teresa. So I think that you've been treating these as one-offs, right? And so, you don't have 100 loans, right? But you still should have a process.
And the process should be consistent, because if we don't answer this email, it's gonna be seem like we're agreeing July's effect.
No, I'm just saying don't lose. In other words, when you write a letter demanding payment for what you owe us up to here, but do not lose that offer or make them think, well, we're not going to accept, because the way I'm seeing it is she's saying, when we are not going to accept the July, we want it like this. And is that what you're
So
saying?
what I'm saying is they have acknowledged that they owe the money. They have acknowledged that this loan is outstanding. They know they haven't paid anything on it for 15 months. I would like to send a standard letter saying, this is with you through 12/31. You are late for January, February, March, and April. All payment, please remit payment to the states where you are late, and submit payments for May and June as of X date in those months. And then next month, we send another letter saying exactly the same thing. So we have a paper trail notifying them every month that
We have
they're
a
late,
paper
that
trail
they're in
last
default.
No,
So we have a paper trail from last year.
letter that
Yeah,
Ryan.
let me finish.
What Margaret's suggesting is.
We never followed
Yeah.
that, hang on, we never followed up on that. So then
This is
if
a
we
board,
have-
though. Let's talk to Teresa instead. But it's not like.
Thank you.
And I explained to you that this is a board.
Yes,
Like,
Teresa,
Margaret is not the chair, so it's
Teresa,
not.
what I'm saying is we have a paper trail. So then in July, when the didn't pass, we
Okay.
have a series of letters.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm saying that in that letter that you're writing, add in the fact that we understand this is yours, this is what we want. But if you're gonna pay us in July, you can add in that letter that this is what you're gonna owe us. I mean, we have to add up the interest rates up until that day, any late fees that you acquired and going to acquire until that date. I'm saying write a letter into, and just let's go to the second step. Not, we had this step back when Ronnie was the treasurer. Now, let's take it further. Since they've already agreed, we're gonna pay you. So we let them know, okay, if you're gonna pay us in April, we want this, that. But if you're gonna do it in April, this is what you owe us. So we have to get an accountant to say,
I think just need more information. What Chris just wrote, it really had no details to it,
right, we have.
right? Right, so I think right now, I think we should just go consistent to the form, like Chris said, with a loan, you know, what it was, with a loan, with that wordage, right?
But since we have nothing,
Because I don't think we should even respond to the July thing, because he didn't give us any information on it. I think we should just continue our path.
okay, I understand. They didn't give any information. We can take what they said and provide them with the information, what they're going to be charged. This is what I'm saying. Take what they're saying, which is a statement, I'm willing to pay the full amount in July. Right. Now you take that commitment and say, okay, fine, but this is what you're gonna owe us in July.
So I think that there's a lot of ways that we can do.
Exactly, and since we don't have a standard way of doing it,
Well, hold on.
then it's open to discussion.
Yes, I hear you not wanting to somehow toss the baby out with the bathwater by saying we only want it this way. And I don't think that that's a valid fear. I don't think that is gonna be the problem. What I'm saying is that I don't think what Margaret wants to do, which is initiate a standard routine loan correspondence, which we are behind. We should have been sending them these loans every month, send the demand letter. I didn't know to do that. We would have had the capacity to do it. So now that Margaret's in the seat and is an auditor by trade, will initiate this routine procedure so that, but that first letter we send them can indeed tell them what the balance will be due at maturity.
That's
Right, which is-
exactly,
which-
thank you. That's what I'm trying to say.
Which is July anyway. The maturity is July
First
anyway.
letter should include.
Right, we covered that.
That's
So
right, that's it, that's as far as I want.
all that can do is communicate, because either way, the number will be the same. So we can communicate, this is what you're owed, by the way, in July, this will be the full mature value of the loan. Does that satisfy?
And we didn't put a date. We want to pay, they said July, did we give a date in July?
I think we can arrange.
Exactly. So I'm just don't.
What you're proposing here is changing the terms.
I'm not.
No, not you. What you as a board are proposing is changing the terms of the loan. This loan was given, they were supposed to be making a payment in community pensions. They are in default. We're now proposing changing the terms of the loan and saying, oh, yeah, we're fine with accepting.
That is not-
I will exclude myself from
Let me
that.
finish,
because
let
you
me
have-
finish, just a moment, let me finish.
I had to jump in because you like to do that to Teresa, but I don't want to be included because you said I the board to kick me out.
Okay, I'm taking.
Because I agree with you right now.
Okay,
I'm
just
just saying.
the only point I'm making is, if the board wanted to change the terms of the loan and say, this is due, and send a letter to them, then the board needs to make that decision and needs to direct me on what language you want to put in the letter. I will not do that as treasurer without the board taking action saying, we are changing the terms.
Okay, I want to ask a question. Are we changing the terms? Is it the same as addressing their commitment?
You're changing the
Chris,
term.
I mean, are we really changing terms or are we also addressing their commitment to what they responded to?
I'd like to point out that the thing that I just proposed accomplished the two of your concerns
It
and
did.
did not propose that we change the terms of the loan.
Mhm.
Teresa just wants the information of the full maturity amount of the loan, what will have been paid at the end of July if they either follow Teresa's or Margaret's plan, which I think there's a lot of appropriate thing for them to do, or if whatever they decide to do is wait until July to pay in full, regardless of what we direct them to do. Teresa just wants the full loan amount included in the first letter, and I think Margaret is suggesting that we embark on a routine procedure and not alter the terms of the loan. I didn't hear anyone on this board suggest that we alter the terms of the loan. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I think, Margaret, you can proceed the way that you would like, and Teresa just said that you include the full value of the loan in that first letter.
Chris, I just have a question. So if we demand payment, right, they, is there anything we can do about that?
I'm sorry, Mayor, I can't, the Zoom's not the greatest sound. Can you try to say that again? If we demand payment, what?
If we demand payment now and they don't comply, is there any repercussions, basically? Like say we ask for the money now and, they respond to the say, here it is.
I don't think that there's anything we can do with that if they don't even respond or don't give the money. I just find it interesting, especially with the amount of evictions they had on people that they just evicted. They evicted like 37 families for non-payment of rent. So that's my whole point. Send in the letter. I would love to see what they're doing with it, especially since they love to post 5-day notices on people's doors, especially my neighbors. They on their doors all the time. So that's my whole point on it.
We need to talk.
So to respond to your question,
I
they were
asked.
given a letter last year in the middle of the year.
No,
They did not respond, and we didn't know who about it. So obviously they're.
Yeah.
Well, we would like Chris to answer that.
The reason I'm
She's
asking
frozen.
because there's two.
So the question is, Margaret will send this letter that starts, that says you're in default, this is what's due. Even if they don't, is there anything we can do in the event that they don't respond to Margaret and pay?
Well, we can start an action, but I'm gonna suggest to you that if you want to ask me questions about how to collect a debt, we're gonna have to go into an attorney-client session.
So I mean,
For now.
I think we just should send a generic letter.
But the letter that Margaret has described. Okay.
Similar to the one that Ryan mentioned in the middle of the year.
Yes,
I think we start, like the mayor said, I think we start with that letter because that,
And we send it every month.
yes.
right, well,
It should be.
until you hear a response, or they pay or hear a response. Because that sets a foundation for starting this, you know.
Provides a paper.
Yeah, and then, again, we're talking about 4 or 5 months. Either way, we should get our money in July, right? Whether they respond to our letter or whatever, we need to get our money.
Yeah.
But the one that was live in June is telling us everything that they already have.
Right.
And we'll show even like what further payments will be.
Okay, so let's.
So everyone, I think there needs to satisfy here, and I would like to move on.
Okay, thank you, I agree. Is that, everybody agree with that? The annual policy review, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yes, you need to schedule a governance committee meeting,
Okay, we'll work on that.
and that's actually it, the last 2 weeks.
You should get some.
Yes.
Something's here.
We'll have to follow up on the last 2 items, like scheduling the governance committee meeting and scheduling the regular meeting.
Okay. And we have to coordinate with you. People.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll circle back to that. Right. Not today.
Right.
Okay. Okay. That's public comment. Do we have any public comment? No? Once, twice. Good. Gonna get a motion to adjourn, Mr. Mayor?
So
We're all tight. Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
I still want a group picture.
Me too.
Thank you.